Boys and girls, you are very welcome to our very second session. Last time when we met, we looked at foreign influence in African continent. And there were so many pertinent issues that we talked about. And I'm very sure that you know the reasons why African continent was referred to as a dark continent. I'm also convinced that you know the reasons why African continent took a long time to be known outside the world. And you also know the groups of foreigners that came to African continent. But today, we want to look at something very special. But before we look at it, I want to remind you that there were basically three groups of foreigners that came to Africa from Asia. And these include, we're going to write, the Arab traders, we had the Persians, and then we also had the last group as Indians. So these were the three groups of foreigners that came to Africa from Asia. Now, remember I told you that we're going to look at these groups one by one. Today, we shall look at Arab traders. And our next subheading is Arab traders. So our subheading is Arab traders. So boys and girls, I want to report to you that between the 18th and 19th century, Arab traders became the very first group of foreigners to come to Africa. They came from Saudi Arabia in a continent called Asia. They used a special means of water transport known as doors. One tried that, doors. So they used doors to sail across the Indian Ocean. These doors were powered, but the movement of these doors was powered by the southeast trade winds. You can call them monsoon winds. So we can write it here, monsoon winds. So monsoon winds were very helpful to Arab traders in a way that they helped Arab traders to sail across the Indian Ocean. And this explains why monsoon winds are sometimes called trade winds. It is very important. I will ask you whether you want or not. The one they ask you that why were monsoon winds sometimes called trade winds? Boys and girls, there is one reason, but it can give in different responses. One, they helped Arab traders to sail through the Indian Ocean. We're going to write it down. They helped Arab traders to sail across the Indian Ocean. Another person can say that they facilitated trade between continents separated by sea. They facilitated trade between continents separated by sea. Those are reasons why monsoon winds are sometimes called trade winds. Boys and girls, when Arab traders came to Africa, they established themselves along the East African coast. Where they carried out trade and other commercial activities in towns like Mombasa, Mogadishu, Malindi, Mafia, Sofala, Kilwa, Zanzibar, Pemba, and so many others. Now, I want us to use this map to locate the towns and the area where Arabs established themselves or settled. There are basically two areas. One, in coastal towns or coastal area, and in islands of East Africa. Now, these are areas that Arabs chose to settle in. One we had Malindi. This is our map showing coastal towns. One we had Malindi. They settled in Malindi. Malindi is a coastal town found in Kenya. Number two, we had Mombasa. They also settled in Mombasa. Number four, we also settled in Dar es Salaam. Dar es Salaam. I'm sure you all know the spelling of this name. Dar es Salaam. They also settled in Sofala. They also settled in Lindi. Now, they also occupied the islands of East Africa. Like one, we had Pemba. They also settled in Pemba. They also occupied Zanzibar, the biggest island in East Africa. So they settled in Zanzibar. And finally, also occupied Mafia. So these are some of the areas that Arab traders settled in East Africa or in Africa. These Arab traders contributed greatly towards the development of these coastal towns, especially Kilwa. Actually, Kilwa became the biggest and the richest coastal town that was developed by Arabs at the coast. So, boys and girls, it is very important for us to know why Arabs chose to settle along the East African coast. There are various reasons why Arab traders chose to settle on the East African coast. Why did they settle in the interior, but they chose to settle along the coast of East Africa? So we're going to look at reasons why Arabs, we can write it here. Reasons why Arabs settled along the East African coast. It's very important to note so the boys and girls, there are various reasons why Arabs chose to establish themselves along the East African coast. One, fertile soils, or presence of fertile soils. You can write it down here. Presence of fertile soils. So these fertile soils persuaded Arab traders to settle along the East African coast. And this explains why Zanzibar became the leading clove growing center in Africa, because of presence of fertile soils that favor the growing of cloves. The second factor, boys and girls, is reliable rainfall. Reliable rainfall. Reliable rainfall. So this reliable rainfall also attracted Arab traders to settle along the East African coast. This shaded area is the East African coast. Then the last factor, boys and girls, is presence of warm climatic conditions. Presence of warm climatic conditions. Or we can say warm climate. You can simply say warm climate. So these are factors that persuaded Arabs to settle along the East African coast. It's very, very important, and you must know this. Now, having looked at so many pertinent issues, we also want to look at the reasons for the coming of Arab traders to the East African coast. Why did Arabs leave their homeland and they came as far as East Africa is concerned? So our next subheading is reasons why Arab traders came to Africa. And we're writing it. Reasons why. You can say Arabs or Arab traders came to Africa. So basically the real reasons why Arab traders came to Africa. One of them is to carry out trade or to trade. So what we can say, to trade, as simple as this. To trade. By nature, Arabs were trade merchants. So they had the desire to carry out trade in Africa. And this explains why they became the ringleaders of long-distance trade, ivory trade, and also Indian Ocean trade as well as slave trade in Africa. The second reason for their coming was to spread Islam. To spread Islam. So we can say to spread Islam. Arab traders had that burning desire to spread Islam beyond their homeland. And actually, they wanted to convert so many Africans into Islam. Unfortunately, Islam did not take root. It did not spread so fast along the East African coast. And we shall look at reasons why Islam took a long time to spread on the East African coast, and yet it was the first foreign religion. The other factor, boys and girls, is to run away from religious persecution. To run away from religious persecution, or to escape religious persecution. You can also say to flee or run away from religious wars. This is the simplest you can take. Run away from religious wars. You know, after the death of Prophet Muhammad, Arabs in the entire Asia, especially Saudi Arabia, started power struggle, and hence forcing some Muslims to come as far as East Africa is concerned. Now, when we are saying to cut out trade, to spread Islam, to flee or to run away from religious persecution or religious wars, were the main reasons why Arab traders came to Africa. But then the most important reason why they came to Africa was to carry out trade. Now, Arabs, the 200 years on the East African coast, Arabs contributed greatly towards the development of Africa, especially East African coast, in many ways. So in this case, we shall look at how Arab traders contributed to the economic, social, and political development of the interior. One of them, we shall look at this according to the social, political, and economic contributions. So our next subheading is reasons, contributions, contributions of Arab traders. So in this case, we shall be looking at how Arab traders contributed to the development of Africa, economically, socially, and politically. And we shall start by looking at the economic contributions. So our A will be economic contributions. This is not new to you, I'm very certain, because you looked at the same in P5 and also in P6. Economically speaking, boys and girls, Arabs introduced new crops. They introduced new crops. So I'm only going to try to phrase it, then you come up with a complete point. So my phrase is new crops. So Arabs contributed to the introduction of new crops like rice and cloves. And indeed, Zanzibar became the leading clove growing center because of the existence or the coming of Arabs. And then the other point, boys and girls, is they introduced zebu cows. Our phrase is zebu cows. I know your intelligent children will come up with complete points. So they introduced zebu cows. When you talk about zebu cows, these were short-horned, or these are short-horned animals. Short-horned cattle. So you are also free to say they introduced short-horned cattle, but it's better for us to say zebu cows. Another one, Arab traders economically led to introduction of cowrie shells. Cowrie shells. So they introduced cowrie shells. So in Africa, there was, especially East Africa, there was no medium of exchange. There was no form of currency to be used as a medium of exchange. So when Arabs came, since they were traders, they had to come up with a form of currency known as cowrie shells. And this was the very first form of currency to be used in East Africa as a medium of exchange. So they introduced cowrie shells. Another factor, boys and girls, is they introduced new items of trade. They introduced new items of trade. So our phrase is new items of trade. Given the fact that Arabs were traders, so there were so many items of trade that they introduced in Africa. For example, they introduced guns, shoes, utensils, carpets, ornaments, to mention but a few. So they introduced new items of trade. Besides that, Arab traders also introduced what you call, led the development of coastal towns. They led the development of coastal towns. You're going to write it here. So the other, fifth point is, those are four. The fifth one is they led development of coastal towns. Development of coastal towns. But I prefer us to say development of trade centers. Trade centers. And remember, I told you that Cuba became the richest and the biggest coastal town or trade center that was developed by Arab traders. And all these coastal towns you're seeing here were developed by Arab traders. Unfortunately, when the Portuguese came, they led the decay of these coastal towns, unfortunately. These were the economic contributions of Arab traders in Africa. Now, today, at this material time, we want to look at the social contributions. How did Arabs contribute to the social development of East Africa? Social contributions. So our next item of discussion is the social contributions. We want to look at how Arabs contributed to the social development of Africa. But we need to understand the meaning of that social. When we talk about social refers to things that bring people together. So what are these facts that Arabs introduced that help to bring Africans together? Socially speaking, Arabs introduced Islam. They introduced Islam. I'm going to try to phrase this, then you come up with complete points. I'm sure you're able to do that. So they introduced Islam. In Africa, we believed in African traditional religion. But when Arabs came, they replaced it with Islam. And actually, Islam became the first foreign religion in Africa. So they introduced Islam. The other point is, they introduced Arabic language. So Arabs introduced Arabic language. And I'm sure most of you are able to speak Arabic, especially Muslims. You're able to speak this Arabic language. Don't forget that it is Arab traders that introduced Arabic language. The other one, boys and girls, is they linked Africa to Asia. Or they connected Africa to Asia. Or we can say they made East Africa known outside the world. So we are saying they linked. Our phrase is linked Africa to Asia. This was very important. It was a positive contribution. They actually made African continent known, at least in Asia. The other contribution, boys and girls, is they built Islamic schools. Islamic schools. There were so many Islamic schools that were built by Arab traders. where they taught Islamic principles, and so many children were educated and taught the needs of Islam. The other contribution, boys and girls, is they introduced new dressing styles. They introduced new dressing styles. So our phrase is dressing styles. For example, the dressing of kanzus and veils. Some of your parents have got kanzus. Even you guys, some of you have kanzus. So such dressing style was introduced by Arab traders. The other contribution we can talk about, they led to intermarriages. They led to intermarriages. So Arabs led to intermarriages led intermarriages with the coastal Bantu. So they led to intermarriages. Our phrase is intermarriages. So you know when Arabs came to Africa, they intermarried with the coastal Bantu, and this led to emergence of Kiswahili culture. They will ask you that how did the Kiswahili culture come to existence in East Africa? Very important question. And you are my witness. You have gone through this. So when such a question is asked, we shall say that Kiswahili came into existence as a result of intermarriages between Arabs and the coastal Bantu. Due to intermarriages between Arabs and the coastal Bantu. Boys and girls, another factor you can talk about is building styles. Building styles. So Arabs also introduced new building styles, like the building of houses using stones. Like you've seen houses being built using stones. That building style was introduced by Arabs. So we're saying new building styles. And which building style is this? The building of houses using stones. If you're so good at English, you can say they introduced new methods of architecture. If you're so good. So, boys and girls, I know you know so many other social contributions of Arab traders. But for today, we want to end here. One, introduced Islam, Arabic language, linked Africa to Asia, Islamic schools, and so many others. Before I conclude, I want to go through the first work that we looked at. We say Arab traders were the first group of foreigners to come to Africa. They came from Saudi Arabia in a continent called Asia. They used the means of water transport known as doors, and these doors were powered by monsoon winds or the southeast trade winds. Actually, the southeast trade winds are also called monsoon winds. And these monsoon winds are known that help Arab traders to sail across the Indian Ocean. And these monsoon winds are sometimes called trade winds because they enable Arab traders to sail across the Indian Ocean, or they facilitated trade between continents separated by sea. It's very, very important, boys and girls. You must note this. You can also revise the P5 work, P6 work. You'll come up with this, especially on foreign influence. We love you so much. Do not forget the situation you're going through. Please obey the precautions that the President sets, the Ministry of Health, and other stakeholders. Even when you leave this place,